After having got introduced with the background of cultural studies, now we shall go ahead with Stuart Hall, who is considered to be an important figure in the field of cultural studies. We are going to study an essay uh, by Stuart Hall. The title of the essay is Cultural Studies and its Theoretical Legacies. We shall talk about the essay once we get introduced with Stuart Hall. So you see that Stuart Hall was not originally a British person. He was a Jamaican British academic writer. Means he belongs to Kingston. He was born in Kingston, in Jamaica. Jamaica is the islands in West Indies. In 1932, he was an academic writer and cultural studies pioneer. I mentioned that he was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and died in London at the age of 82 in 2014. He was a Rhodes Scholar, a very prestigious scholar position at Merton College, Oxford. He has held various positions, and one of it was that he was a Rhodes Scholar at Merton College, Oxford. Further, he was the director of the Birmingham Centre for Contemporary Cultural Studies since its inception. Okay, it was established in the year 1964, and he was director of this center and professor of sociology at the Open University. Look, you can understand how your knowledge of sociology can be helpful in understanding culture. Hall presented a number of television programs, including the BBC series titled Redemption Songs, and many broadcasts for the Open University. He was the president of the British Sociological Association and a member of the Runnymede Commission on the Future of Multi-Ethnic Britain. Hall also chaired the arts organization INIVA and Autograph ABP. So this is a kind of organization that he chaired. He was the chairman. Further, Stuart Hall was the first editor of New Left Review. It was a magazine, rather journal, I can say, a founding editor of this particular journal. Uh, Soundings, and author of many articles and books on politics and culture, including Policing the Crisis and The Great Moving Right Show. This was for Marxism Today, the journal, one more journal. And in this particular show, he used coin means to find a new word. He coined the term Thatcherism. Margaret Thatcher was the British Prime Minister, a lady British Prime Minister, and Thatcherism the term Thatcherism comes from her surname. So he used that term Thatcherism. So he is credited to have coined this particular word. And he is well known for his memoir, Familiar Stranger, A Life Between Two Islands, and a collection of Stuart Hall's political essays, Selected Political Writings. These are some of his works. Now we refer to the Great Moving Right Show and other essays. That means it got published in the form of essays in the year 2017. Now let's try to understand his intellectual stance. Stance means position, his perspective, his way of looking. So Hall's intellectual stance bedevils cultural studies. Okay, it makes it strong, especially as it becomes institutionalized in American universities. You can understand. It was established at the center at one university in UK, and later it spread internationally. And it was institutionalized in American universities. Okay. When we talk about the nature of cultural studies, it is dialogic, multi-voiced, and that made it a moving target. Means it was, opposed, criticized initially. Means there were many echoes that were opposition was intellectual in nature, and further it was inspired by various movements. Initially by Marxism, then anthropology and sociology. Sociological functionalism was one of the factors that influenced cultural studies. And apart from that, even aestheticist literary criticism. These are certain intellectual paradigms which contributed to the development of cultural studies. So, although he was, the professor of sociology, you can understand how multi-versatile he was. Cultural studies avoids definitive statements of its own position. So Hall says a cultural studies that is always self-reflectively deconstructing itself, not constructing. To use Derrida's term, deconstruction. I quote him now. Let me put it this way. You have to be sure about a position to teach a class. But you have to be open-minded enough to know that you are going to change your mind by the time you teach it next week. So he talks about this. Cultural studies is not constructing, it is deconstructing self-reflectively. You can understand the statement. It's the position that you take in one class may change next week. You should be open-minded to accept this change. Whatever I think today may not be the same next week, in coming time. So cultural studies is, a kind of deconstructing field. When we talk about, the period, Hall's work has been influenced by Western Marxism for several years. Post-structuralism, he studied all these, things, and especially he was influenced by Michel Foucault's post-structuralism and even critical race theory and feminism. Means we are going to understand it while studying his perception in cultural studies, some theoretical legacies. So you can see that cultural study is a very open field. And this openness has been characterized by some critics of cultural studies as its willingness and ability to absorb anything, absorb, to take into. So this openness is reflected in this kind of stance, position. It is a kind of academic imperialism that lacks intellectual or disciplinary boundaries or values. You cannot fix it in a particular discipline. Therefore, it is an interdisciplinary field. Okay, so this is how we understand Stuart Hall's position on cultural studies, his contribution to cultural studies. In the next lecture, we shall be talking about the essay Cultural Studies and its Theoretical Legacies with reference to Stuart Hall.